All right, it is 4 o'clock. We have a quorum present, so the St. Patrick's Day edition of the Board of Health is now open.
You're checking for the green, right?
Well, I'm Scottish, so I'm sorry.
You mean you're excused?
I'm excused.
Okay. I mean, I worked really hard to find a green sweater.
Well, this is green.
Okay, good
All
work.
right.
Good work.
All right. All right. Just to remind everyone that this meeting is recorded by audio tape and also by TV, so you're all aware. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on some issue that is not on the agenda? General public comments. Hearing none, we'll move on to the agenda. The minutes from February 18th were sent to everyone. Are there any comments, additions, subtractions?
No.
Objections? Hearing none from the board, the minutes of February 18th are approved by unanimous consent. Roberto, 20 Nobodere.
Yes. So there was an inspection done on 20 Nobodere Farm Road at the 4 units done there that are located at that address. There was evidence of overcrowding. There were people sleeping in unheated, unfinished garages. There were mattresses located there. There were beds, full closets, situations like that. So the inspectors proceeded to declare it unfit for habitation, and we need a ratification from the board. I did email the reports. They're not in the packet just because of trying to save some paper. The reports are large. There is also an appeal to 2 specific sections. The owner is requesting to store the mattresses on the property in an unheated, unfinished garage area. He did email me about an hour ago. He is asking to push that appeal back to the April meeting because he will not be able to be here today.
Questions, comments from the board?
In the meantime, where are the
We would
mattresses?
need to ratify the order to uninhabit, to declare it uninhabitable, and he will have to store the mattresses in his garage or something until we have to give him a stay of execution until his appeal is heard.
Any other comments?
Just to be, the mattresses and the storage were in the basement area? Was that the
It was in all
So what he's suggesting is he'll move them to the garage or something
exactly,
like
and
that.
just stack them up in a garage or something. He's asking to not have to remove them.
So are we? So let's assume we validate the report, or and then if I guess is it a separate question about what, or you can handle the mattresses administratively, and we don't need to get involved.
Well, the mattresses are part of the
They're part of the
Of
first
the order.
So we could support the first order without the mattress and then listen to his arguments next month.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
And that would be
Or support the order as it is, and they'd have to go off-site, I guess. Or some other
It would
solution.
force him to
Yeah.
go
Just trying to
outside,
understand.
but he did appeal. He is exercising his right to an appeal. So we can't fine him. We can't
Right.
ticket him
Right.
or
So,
anything, or
I mean,
enforce anything
I'm
until.
open to the concept of listening to the argument of the mattresses being stored in the garage
In the interim.
in the interim.
Okay,
and
just
then
to be clear.
So we would need a motion from the board to support the condemnation, with the exception that the owner is allowed to keep the mattresses in the garage until such time as he reappears.
Just one more question.
Yes.
Until such time, meaning
The April
the
21st
April-
hearing.
The April meeting?
The April meeting.
All right.
So do I hear a motion? Motion. A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman says aye, so the condemnation is in order, with the exception that he can keep his mattresses in the garage until the April meeting, until such time we will address that issue.
Could I ask you just another practical question so I understand? So trying to remember, one of these issues had to do with, what was it, bunk beds, for example.
Yes.
So that is this order mean the whole unit is uninhabitable, period? Or does it mean that if he moves the bunk bed out, they can inhabit that room within conformance to the existing regulations?
It's uninhabitable until the violations are corrected. So once he removes the bunks, the locations where people are sleeping in the unheated areas, or if he permits the garage to be a legal residence, that's a different story as well.
So in the meantime, those other bedrooms or whatever they are, we would re-inspect to see if the
Yes, and he's in the process.
order is complied with, and then they can be rehabilitated?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just so I know.
Yep.
Number 6, variance request.
So there's a variance request for 84 Quidnet. There is due to the conformity of the lot, it's hard to put a leach field on the lot. I believe the information for the local upgrade approval is in your packet. Mr. Santos is here to speak to that point. This is a straightforward request.
You have the floor.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Quidnet Properties, LLC. As Roberto had said, this is a small lot out on Quidnet Road. It's actually a parcel of land which is on the water side of Quidnet Road. We are seeking a local upgrade approval for the property. The property is not located with any of the Town of Nantucket Harbor Watershed Protection Districts. It is located in excess of 300 feet from Sacajah Pond, and the groundwater flow direction for the site is essentially from Quidnet Road through the property to the ocean itself. The local upgrade approval is seeking relief from Title V in a local code for 3 particular items: the crawl space to leach facility setback, which 20 feet is required. We're asking for 12 feet. The leaching facility to property line setback, 10 foot required. We're at 0. And the septic tank to property line, 10 foot required. We're at 4 feet. Also a requirement under the 2 depots, as 1 depot was provided by the previous engineer for soil testing. The leach facility to property line setback is somewhat questionable on whether we need it or not. I asked for it to be safe because we're not any less than to the abutting properties. There is, however, a paper street which my client owns to the north, to the south. So
Could
technically,
you bring that
Would
up?
you be
Sure.
able to- yeah, just- I meant to look up the lot. I mean, I assume I know it, Paul, but I wanted to be sure.
so I can actually explain it here. So the property itself is located to the north of the paper road and the south of the paper road. So technically, the owner has legal rights to the center of the paper road. We are set back the required distance from the property lines, from any abutting property line. However, I did ask for the variance from the 10-foot setback just to be on the safe side. You'll see this is an existing septic system, which is a metal septic tank with a leach pit, and the leach pit is actually in the paper road currently. Under this proposal, the septic tank and leach facility would be located completely outside of the paper road. It would be, however, right up to that property line, and that's why we're asking for the waiver. As you can see, a number of wells on the subject property. We are in excess of the 100 feet from all the abutting wells. The well on this property is less than 100, but we have applied for a relocation, and we'll re-drill the well on our property, so the system itself will be completely compliant with the 100-foot radius to all wells on the abutting property and our site. We have sought approval from the Conservation Commission, and I do have a valid order of conditions for the work that you see before you. The closest coastal resource is the coastal dune, which is located along the paper road component of the property.
Just to make sure, the access to the property is along Norcross Road?
Correct.
Right, and then they turn right?
Yeah, I mean, the physical address is 84 Quidnet, but it's down Norcross, which is the dead end, and then they access the property along the front piece.
The last lot there.
There's one other lot on the other side, of it.
I think the nice thing is that it has nothing to do with nothing, but they're well kept.
Correct. So,
Okay, questions Mr. Santos from the board? Very quiet.
No, it sounds to me straightforward on
Yep.
the limitations of the lot and the location. And that's the recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to approve or disapprove the variance request.
I'd make a motion to approve the request.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of granting the variance request as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman says aye. The variance request is granted.
Thank you.
Tight Tank 10 Main Avenue.
Yes, there is a
I will recuse myself.
Go right
on
ahead.
this one.
Go relax.
There's a request for a tight tank at the 10 Main Avenue. This is a house move caused by erosion. The new coastline is really,
It's there.
It's close. So the house will be moved to this area, and there's an attached site plan that is in your packet. There is one letter of opposition that came in this week, just to let Mr. Gasparo know. I'm not sure if I forwarded it to you. The person is claiming that the tight tank would be right across from their deck. That is just a matter for consideration for the board. But you'll see on the site plan the location, and I'll let Mr. Gasparo take over.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Art Gasparo, the engineer for the project. I think the directors did a good job summing up the proposal. The other thing I would add, which is noted on the plan, is that the existing septic components, which are very close to the top of the coastal bank, will be removed. I am in the process of filing a notice of intent application with the Conservation Commission. There's been what we would consider a friendly enforcement order that allowed sort of the quick move of that house. The erosion out there has been rather rapid, and so the tight tank is to replace a system of equivalent capacity. So that's, I think, one other important fact to note, which is shown on the plans as well. As a two-bedroom system, two-bedroom design flow. However, what we have done is to oversize the tank, and what that does is to reduce the frequency of pumping. So then the pump truck's not out there as often by going with a slightly larger tank. Tank will, of course, have an alarm panel with a visible and audible alarm that's set at 3/5 capacity. For when that then gets triggered, there'll be pump contracts in place. And really, I think from your perspective, we are in the Section 49 Nantucket tight tank district, which does kind of make this a unique case as well for installing the tight tank. So I think this is the solution that would be preferable to the board as well. It meets all essentially of the other provisions. It's greater than 10 feet from a property line, greater than 50 feet from the wells. In terms of the abutter, I actually received an email directly from her this morning. I corresponded with her and basically explained, that we're not going to go closer to an eroding shoreline with the bank to get it further away from their house. And we can't move it in the other direction, or it's going to get too close to the wells. It's going to be 50 feet from the wells. So there's not a lot of really other options out there. And I also went on to explain what I mentioned to you in terms of frequency of pumping, the low design, the low flow that's really anticipated from a couple small cottages, and the bigger tank. So with that, we would request board approval so that we could then move on to file for the actual installation permit, which would follow this board's approval. And I'd be happy to try to address any questions or concerns that you may have.
Any questions from the board?
No. I might have, Steve, the alarm, this letter that the woman that wrote said this, is the alarm audible or something that she would hear? Would she hear the alarm from the system, or is it just goes into the house?
No, she would hear it.
She would hear it.
Go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one thing that I noted in my email to the abutter as well is, though, the alarm won't be right above the tank. It'll be over at the house, the relocated house.
Oh.
So essentially, it's not going to be like the tank is right there and there's an alarm sticking up out of the ground. So hopefully that helps a bit too.
Okay. Any other questions for Art? Go ahead.
Just on the size issue here?
Yes.
That it's larger and then less frequent pump outs. Is that an option? I'm not sure this is for you, Art, maybe for Art guys. For any lot, or is that specific to this lot, or is it attractive?
I'd be happy to try to.
Yeah, I'm just
yes,
curious.
the Title V sets a minimum tank size. It doesn't set a maximum tank size.
Mm-hmm.
So the design flow is still the design flow. You can't just get more bedrooms, say, and do an addition and get a building permit because you have a larger tank.
Yeah, I got a 20 million
Yeah,
gallon
it's still, it's only permitted for X bedrooms. However, there's no maximum size on the tank. The reason the tank is sized as it is because of the limitations of how much waste a single truck can haul. So we've sized it as such that, I think the truck, 3,400, something around there, 3,400 gallons. So, and again, this 4,000 gallon tank's never really going to be at 4,000. So that's the reason that's the logic behind the sizing.
So to say that again, if the size of the tank facilitates less frequent pickups,
Yes.
and you want to make sure you have enough in the tank to fill the truck coming out, so it's one.
That's right.
I'm trying to
You
get that in my
basically
mind.
have, with the pumping, as you all know, there's a per gallon disposal cost, as we've talked about, over the years.
Yeah.
But then there's also a fee for the hauler
So like the
for just for
physical
mobilizing, right?
coming
Typically,
out and driving
whether they
back.
pump, 100 gallon, whether they got a trip has a certain base cost and then
Yeah.
a per gallon cost. So if you can reduce the frequency of the trips, and the other thing I think on the, and what I explained this to the abutter this morning, I got into a fairly lengthy email. I was trying to meet her concerns to the extent that I could, is that I think when you see folks on tight tanks, they're starting to get these bills, they're knowing that they're paying on a per gallon cost. They probably tend to be a bit more frugal with their water use. Right, so that again, the less that goes into every drop you use in the house is going in. So again, the less they use, then the less frequency, and then the less expense.
Steve, so with the size of the tank they have, can you pump it in one trip?
Yes.
Okay.
That was our goal.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Was the abutter here to speak?
No, the abutter didn't. The abutter didn't come. No.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Comments?
So let me just speak. Would you expect? Is the size of this tank likely to be repeated? Does it become a standard eventually?
Yeah, I
So
mean
when
that's
people
that's
sort of
what I'm
figure
recommending.
this out.
It's what I'm recommending. It's the one that we just installed. That's now actually in the ground at 13 Mass Ave. You remember sort of the whole.
Yeah.
So we put a 4,000 in there, and that and I said to this owner, because I don't want to, it's obviously a greater initial cost, capital cost to buy a larger tank.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure. But my recommendation as an engineer, knowing sort of the infrastructure and abilities of Nantucket, is that this is what makes the most
It
sense.
makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. We need a motion to approve the tight tank request or deny it.
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of granting the tight tank request, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman says aye. Go put in your tank.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll get a permit first. Thank you.
Okay, we have another variance request.
Yes.
In Ecuador.
This is a variance request for 20 Equator.
Equator.
They are requesting to stay the mandatory connection to the sewer. They are outside of the Wellhead district. They are outside of any of the watershed districts as well. They don't have to connect for at least 2 years from the moment of the letter that was sent. They are requesting that they do not have to connect to sewer until such time that their system does fail. However, the sewer has been in front of their line for their property for a significant amount of time now. They were just notified by us, but
Equator is the one on Friendship that goes in a year?
I believe so, right?
Gotcha.
Yes.
And there's sewer going on Equator around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they were an account that just had not hooked up and got picked up as we were
Exactly.
doing our exercise to find out who who wasn't connected.
Exactly.
I see.
So they have 2 years?
They already have 2 years because they're outside of every protection
Well, they
zone.
already have, so they have to hook up now.
Yeah.
And the reasons why?
They're requesting that the variance be granted based on the fact that the resident right now is an 88-year-old lady who is on a limited income. They are asking that at such time that they can either sell the house or if the system fails between now and then to not have to connect to sewer.
So it's sort of like a quasi-financial hardship request.
Correct.
Comments, sense of the board?
Well, the sewer was put in when the subdivision was done.
Which
And
was
it was
20 years ago or whatever?
more than that.
More than that, 30?
But they were dry lines, and that's why some of those people, before it got approved, chose to build, and they put in septic systems. But the sewer's been there for years and years and years.
So the cost of connection, just so we know what we're talking about here, is
All you're
what?
talking about is the cost to connect.
So this is the $2,000 item, and would
Yes.
there be a privilege fee?
This would be a septic to sewer, so it would be only $500.
Only $500?
Yes, and then there's
2,500.
yeah, and then
And are
is
there any other
the
fees? And if
the privilege fee
The
as well.
privilege fee, which is amortizable over 20 years,
Mhm.
and $500, and
And then the work.
then the work, and the stubs are in, or whatever, as you say, Jim, already?
The what?
It's possible that, actually, some of those lots in there, we found didn't have stubs, some
Mhm.
had stubs,
I see, so.
so it's,
Maybe a
you'd have to
stub.
do a little, whoever's doing the job would have to do a little, maybe a camera to see if the stub
If
is
there's
there.
a stub there, not, then they've got to put the pipe from the sewer to the
All
house.
right, cut the pipe
Cut
off
the
at the
pipe
tank
off.
and just run it to
Yeah,
the stub that's on their side of the road.
right.
And it's not going to be any cheaper than connecting right now.
It's true.
Right, you mean later on?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, later on. I mean,
Yeah.
so, and they have 2 years to do it.
Well, they're asking for more than 2 years. They're asking for
Till
an
the system
unlimited
fails.
amount of
I'm
time.
uncomfortable with unlimited.
That's what I'm just-
trying to find a comfort zone here.
Right, because I appreciate the hardships, but on the other hand, once you go this direction, there might be lots of hardships.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, on Equator itself, are there 10 lots like this, or just one? I don't know.
There's not too many left.
Yeah. Art, you have a comment?
Yes, we do have the veteran loan program that would
Right.
take care of the installation from the house and permit fees, and it's a 20-year loan at 2%.
Yeah, so there's hardly any upfront cost. This is almost all the cost is going to be amortizable over time. It's not that it's free, but,
Yeah, so it's a 20-year loan.
yeah, and plus the privilege fee, and anyway. So I'm just a little reluctant to do it open-ended.
I am too.
And maybe there's a,
I mean, they have 2 years, right?
They have 2 years from the moment we sent them the letter, so 2 years from this past October. So until October
So that's 2 years.
2017.
I wouldn't extend the 2 years then.
Mhm.
They've got 2 years. They can get a loan,
yeah,
It
and
won't be that much.
yeah, so, I mean,
It's our fault for not making them do it
way
a long
back.
time ago.
it's
Yeah.
our fault, but they still have, now they have 2 years. I'm
Yeah,
comfortable
this
with that.
this was
I'd be
missed.
upset if we said they had to do it tomorrow.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was missed from when the regulation was passed in 2003.
Yeah. So,
All right, any other questions, discussion? Do I have a motion to approve or disapprove the variance request?
I make a motion, we disapprove.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor of not approving the request, say aye.
aye.
Chairman says aye, and the request is not granted. Our Surfside letter, I know we have an extension on that, but I just like to get that done.
Yes, so I added the wording. It should be in the packet, and I just doesn't seem like it is. But I did add the wording that was discussed. I don't have it. It might be in.
You know.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I do, and I still disagree. I don't think it's strong enough.
Okay, because the wording that is in that packets, in that letter says that the Board of Health does not have direct jurisdiction over the 40B, as long as all the rules.
And regulations.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should make it stronger, just saying that, look, it's got nothing to do with the Board of Health. Absolutely nothing, because it doesn't. I don't want anyone to think that maybe we're in favor if they follow all the rules, because I don't want to say I'm in favor or I'm against it. So, I wouldn't vote for this.
There are many aspects of the 40B that the Board of Health is involved in, but it's all based on rules and regulations. So as long as the rules and regulations are followed, we won't get involved. But as soon as they don't, then we have to get involved.
But what they're basically doing is they're looking for our blessing.
Well, I don't think we're giving their blessing. We're just
okay.
we're just saying we can't say anything.
The zoning board is just asking for comments. This isn't from the development group at all. This is the zoning board requesting if we want to make comments on the property or not. And what we're saying here
we don't
is,
want to make any comments.
or we can say we don't want to make any comments.
No.
Well, can we do this? Let's just go back a minute, Jim. For example, other boards do have an involvement, and I guess that's because I sit on the Board of Selectmen. We have taken a fairly strong, aggressive position that we think the 40B application at 106 is not appropriate in that location for any number of reasons. And I think from the ZBA's point of view, if other boards all just pass, so to speak, I think let me put it another way. I think it's helpful if there are things we can say that sort of support the difficulty of having a 40B development at this location. That doesn't hurt anybody, and it's within our power to say something. You got to follow every rule, and I think it's appropriate to say it because they may come back and require variances if they ever get that far. And the fact that we've not, variance involves judgment. It's just not a rule to follow. So I'm not quite sure how to get at that, Roberto. Maybe that's what your language says in effect.
I'm comfortable with the
language itself?
Yeah.
Could we read the language?
Yeah,
I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, for some reason it came out on his packet alone.
Yeah.
Read it. Why don't you read it?
Sure. The Nantucket Board of Health has reviewed the request of January 21, 2016 by the Zoning Board of Appeals for comments on a proposed 40B development located at 106 Surfside Road in Nantucket, Mass., referred to hereafter as Surfside Commons. The Board of Health does not have oversight over the construction of Surfside Commons as long as all applicable rules and regulations pertaining to this development are followed. Furthermore, the Nantucket Health Department will be available for all permitting and technical commentary required with the necessary permitting of this development. If you have any further need for comment, please feel free to contact the board. Yeah, I don't think I have a problem with that language, Jim. I might even think about adding something under applicable rules and regulations of the Board of Health, which is our jurisdiction.
Yeah, I would add that.
Okay. And then
And I think that just says what are the facts, so that it shouldn't. I don't think we're encumbering ourselves in any way by going that far and making that statement.
I think it's not commenting on it per se. It's saying what it says. So if we could vote on that wording, and then I will stop by and sign it
tomorrow. Okay.
Does that make sense?
So read just the sentence.
Amendment.
Well, I was just adding the phrase, and this
Yeah.
is in the second paragraph.
Right.
The Nantucket Board of Health does not have oversight over the construction of Surfside Commons as long as all applicable rules and regulations of the Board of Health pertaining to this development are followed.
Yeah. Fine.
Okay.
So I need a motion to approve the letter as
It's
read.
amended.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I say aye, and I'll stop by. This is Thursday. We have it tomorrow, or should I do it
I
Monday?
can get it done tomorrow.
I'll stop by tomorrow afternoon and sign it.
Sounds good.
So we can get that off,
Mm-hmm.
even though we have more time. I don't like things hanging around.
Well, that's good. Gets it done.
All right. Yes, Dukes Road review. We mentioned at the last meeting there was some comments about some citizens of Dukes Road.
Yes.
Some comments, and we wanted to
Yes,
discuss
so just to preface, in the ensuing days, we have received 5 variance requests for properties on Dukes Road to postpone or waive the requirement to connect to the sewer line that was run. I believe that there are residents of Dukes Road in the audience right now that have many questions for the board, and we have to hold this as an open hearing for the board for
Right.
this.
I mean, we're willing to have questions, but we really can't discuss individual variances.
We
because it
can
would
discuss
have to be
individual variances,
They would
exactly.
have to be on the agenda for next week.
It is in the purview of the board to issue a policy, a statement though, on regard to Dukes, and that is allowed in this case if it's so seen by the board.
Well, I would be open to hear the comments from Dukes, and then those properties that have requested variances, we will deal with at the April meeting.
Okay, then we should open the floor.
So,
Any?
Dukes people, just step forward, identify yourself.
Chris Whitting. Well, I'm sure that you've all gotten a look at the letters and emails that have been sent. Basically, our position is that we're now deeply impacted by a sewer that was put in by a private developer, which, unbeknownst to us, was going to become a municipal sewer to which we were going to be required or asked to hook up to. At no point during the planning of this sewer was any notification given to the neighborhood. Our basic premise is that we should have been included in and been notified that the sewer was going to be put in, and B, what impact it was going to have on us financially and, as an imposition for construction and all of that. I don't think that there are, well, speaking for myself, I'm anxious to hook up to a sewer. I have an old system, and I would love to have a sewer to hook up to. I'm not happy about this sewer. It's a small diameter, low pressure line, which I think when all is said and done and everybody is built to what they're currently entitled to, I think it's going to end up being a problem. The engineers say no, and so we have to trust them at their word. But our premise right now is that we've really been left out of the loop, and well, like I said, I don't need to kick the horse down the road anymore,
Right.
because I'm sure you've read our concerns, and I hope you take them into account. There are a lot of people that have systems which are fairly new, some that are not new, but Mr. Crowley disagrees that they're no longer viable. But it's a big expense. It's a big expense if what you have is working, and it's also become knowledge through the sewer planning meetings that we've attended that parts of Dukes Road were to be sewered. Now, if the town was going to put in a sewer themselves, then first of all, we'd know about it. Second of all, we'd have a time frame, which probably would be in the neighborhood of years, not months. And the first notice we got about this line was the week before it was going in, and a few, and I mean by a few, I mean maybe 3 or 4 residents of Dukes Road received a letter from Mr. Bracken saying that we could hook up to the sewer if we wanted to, or do nothing. And he gave us a crazy price of almost $6,000 to put in a stub. So, of course, everybody went, well, okay, we can do nothing. Anyway, I urge you to review the letters and give it your consideration.
We will.
I'm not the only one to
Right.
have something to say.
But it's
for
my
sure.
understanding you do have stumps, by the way.
There are no stubs, no.
It's a
That's part of the problem. And one of the things that we're asking for is relief from the hookup fee and the privilege fee to try and sort of offset the additional costs that we're going to have just to put in the stub. And,
Okay.
Kara did clarify that the stubs were not put in
Okay.
based on the type of line that was put through.
Okay.
well,
Then I stand corrected.
we've had a lot of questions answered, and Roberto's been very forthcoming. I can't say that for
Okay.
the DPW, at least at the beginning of this situation, but Roberto's been very helpful, and the boards, both departments have been accommodating by giving us a special meeting last week that was, we learned a lot. It doesn't make us, it doesn't answer some of the questions, and it doesn't make us feel better about not having any input whatsoever. So, yep, I'll
Okay, thank you.
leave some more comments to some more people. Thank you.
I'm Carrie Thornwell at 48 Dukes Road, and my concern was the letter we got saying you can do nothing. We chose to do nothing. I have a 17-year-old Title V septic system. Years ago, we were told we had to get it tested. We signed up with, I think, Visco to get it tested and called in 6-month succession to see about when are we going to get tested, and never got tested. We were on their list, never got tested. That's sort of aside from the fact that we're now being told we have to hook up into this sewer system. My biggest problem, I think, is because we were led to believe it was no big deal a year ago when it was a week before they were putting in the septic. We were asked to, again, pay over $6,000 for a stub, and we thought, well, if we don't have to do anything, why would we be having to invest in a stub at this point for a private developer who's putting the line in, having chosen to do a sewer versus septic systems? If he had chosen to do septic systems, he would have been out more money. We would have been fine with our septic until the town decided to put it in, and then we would, again, have more knowledge of a system that was going to be put in by the town, planned by the town, and hopefully have a say in that. I don't know if that would have come across, but for the sake of the developer to save money doing this line, we're all, in the end, having to pay sooner than we expected. A lot of our septic systems, I think, would be fine for a number of years, 17 years. I think a septic system can live for 30, 40 years, if it's taken care of.
The problem is if it was failed, you'd actually have to spend more money to get an alternate design
Right,
system.
but the average length of a septic system's life is not just 17 years. I understand I will fail automatically now because there is a sewer line down the road. So there's an automatic failure on my system, even though it's only 17 years old. Art's shaking his head no. If I'm incorrect, then I appreciate that. If I'm not going to be automatically failed. So I won't automatically fail.
No, you wouldn't automatically fail, but if there's
Okay.
a sewer, then you have to connect.
Right, then I have to connect.
Right.
So I'm just
But
asking
if you didn't
for-
have a sewer and your system failed, you would now have to spend more money to put in an alternate design system,
Right,
which
and
would
I
cost more
understand
money
that.
than hooking up to the sewer.
I understand
So
that.
in many ways, someone could argue that the line is actually going to save you money ultimately at some point.
Ultimately, it's just, that's what I'm asking for, is time to get this thing designed, figure out what kind of pump would be the best scenario for my house, my family, my property. And hopefully some small financial waiver. I know I think we can have the financing over years. That's
Yes.
something I would also
Yes, you can.
request to be able to do this. Because I understand it's going to, and I'm not sure, I haven't talked to an engineer yet, but I have been told it could be up to $20,000. And we did get this letter about 4 months ago saying we have to get going in 6 months. And we're getting up to the 6 months. And I think my letter is just asking for some reasonable time to be able to accommodate my property to get onto this sewer, which I don't know what that will take.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
We did, last meeting, we talking about this and, expanding the time frame. And I think that's reasonable because it's so busy out there. Nothing can happen in 6 months.
Stephen, is the line gravity?
No. It's
It'd be-
low pressure.
You'd have to have
Low
pumps.
pressure?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's right. We talked about this, and I think in general, we have felt under the circumstances that an extension of time is appropriate under the circumstances, and I think we all have to deliberate a little bit about what that time frame is.
Right.
And I think the idea would be to apply it equitably up and down the line so that all property owners benefit from the same deferral of the hookup requirement in terms of time. And I think we've talked earlier today, but there are loan programs to help in the installation cost here and so on. So I think we're trying to find ways at least that minimizes the out-of-pocket up front. It doesn't minimize the payment requirements over time. But I think, as others have said, the benefits to each of the properties are significant once you get on the sewer. And that's part of the equation here. So,
Anyone else like to speak? And then we'll have some discussion on the board.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Marjorie Trott. I just have one thing that's been confusing me since there was that meeting that Chris mentioned that, thank you, Roberto, was held between your department and the DPW. Unfortunately, a lot of our neighbors did not know about that because there still doesn't seem to be a really efficient way. I don't know why you guys don't use the mail system seriously, I only found out about that meeting because a flyer was sent to one other neighbor who forwarded it to me. But honest, this is not a great way to inform people. So I'm not trying to criticize, just a suggestion. The mail works fairly well.
We like suggestions.
And I do have a question, though. At that meeting, because the Stub thing is a really big question. You all assumed, somebody up here just assumed a minute ago, yeah, there are stubs there, right?
I assumed that I was in error.
I know, but the reason I'm bringing
And
that up is...
I assumed I'd actually heard that at some point, but I
Well, let me tell you why I'm bringing that up, because that's a really something we had all assumed also. And I had spoken, because I wanted to understand what I was being asked to spend all this money for. Since the town, all I received from you guys was a letter, right? And I did try to contact your office. I have to say has been fabulous. Thank you. You've answered all my questions beautifully. I'm really grateful. Not every other department has been as generous with quickly providing an answer, and there were a lot of hoops to jump through to get basic. So I called an engineer that could look at the plans. I got the as-built, I got the plan, and had him explain to me what did they do, what's going on, because I couldn't get the answers through the town. And I wanted to know, there's a lot of money to spend. And he said, yeah, there could have been stubs installed. And why weren't they? Okay, so then we went to this meeting that was held last week between the DPW and the health department, and I was told there that no, it wouldn't have been possible to have put stubs ahead of time on this pipe. But at the same time, and this didn't occur to me until I left the meeting, because there was a lot of information, thank you, that I was absorbing at that meeting. Yeah, some of my neighbors, I did not receive this letter, were sent a letter saying, hey, if you spend a lot more money than a stub might necessarily cost, you can have your stub pre-installed. So that's a contradiction. Either stubs could be pre-installed or they couldn't. And again, if we had been included in ahead of time that there's a sewer going in, you guys should know, save up your time, save up your money. You're going to be asked to hook up to this within a 6-month period when it's done. And we're going to have a place where you can ask questions and answer. We could maybe have said, hey, if we're going to hook up, then include us in hooking us up and putting those stubs in right away while you're building it.
Okay, comment, Steve?
You know, great, the DPW maybe with approving that line, if I was in charge, I would have said, well, I'm not going to sign off unless you put a stub over to everybody's lot. And then the letter from Don Bracken, that was just good business. He was trying to get you guys to chip in to defray the cost of Mr. Warden of putting in the line. That's all that was about.
But if he was saying that could happen from the engineer was saying engineering-wise, it is indeed possible to put stubs on ahead of time. At the sewer workshop meeting that the selectmen have been going to, I've been going to these meetings, between talking to engineers, asking questions, reading stuff online, going to those meetings. I feel like I've been taking civil engineering for months, and it's fabulous. I now know all about what happens with my waste, but I didn't really need to take this course at this point in my life. So anyhow, if the engineer is saying this was possible, and at all the sewer workshop meetings, the one that was held last week, one of the selling points, you guys want to sell a sewer, okay? The town wants to sell a sewer to its citizens to protect the harbor. I want to protect the harbor too. I'm not against hooking up to a sewer. As Chris said, I just want to make sure it's done to the right sewer and equitably, and so that I can still afford to live here. So the stub it's in the grand cost of construction, it's not it's a percentage of it. It's not the whole thing. But one of the selling points the town was saying when they were listing on that wall right there what the costs were going to be, both that woman Rosemary with the wastewater, I don't know what her exact title is, forgive me, she stood up and said there will be a stub for every parcel in this proposed sewer area. And then, I believe it was the town council stood up and reiterated, there will be a stub for every parcel. And it wasn't until I stood up and asked a question at that meeting, well, so it sounds like a stub is the town standard. And the head of the DPL just said, well, not necessarily. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have at workshops publicly saying everyone gets a stub and then say no. And even with some of the waiver, we never had, the engineer requested a waiver of sewer policy hearing because he was a private developer putting in a sewer line, okay? And it's general practice that if the town is not putting it in, the developer has this hearing so that everyone can just make sure it fits in with because the town's going to take over the road, right? So the town should know that. Okay, for whatever reason, the town apparently, the DPW said, you don't need that hearing. You don't need to have that hearing, which would have been a place where we could have saved you all this time of listening to us now, because we could have asked all those questions and been informed earlier, and it would have been a place to have said, why aren't there stubs being put in? What is the standard policy? So again, we get that this is the line that's there. You know, if it keeps all of us well and the harbor well in the long run, it'll be great. You know, assuming it all works. It does, I'll be honest. I'm not really pleased about having a pump I now have to maintain because they don't last forever. You got to keep replacing the pump. If it had been a gravity line, great. You guys maintain the pump house. That's awesome. But that's not what's going to happen. So there's a little bit of, we would love that time extension. Thank you. That's really important. But also, again, a reduction of some of the fees simply to compensate for this stub that was not installed. And apparently this sewer line was approved and raced through because that developer was in a hurry. He was the only resident of our street whose needs were taken into account in terms of finances, timing. Yes, it is a time issue. When do I have time to disrupt my life and my yard and my bank account to have this construction done? That takes budgeting, so
Right.
that's all.
Okay.
Anyhow, I've talked a lot. Thank
That's
you for
fine,
listening.
thank you. And clearly things haven't gone well, and we will try to do what we can, but we still have to work a way to get you hooked up to the sewer.
Oh, we know that. We know
And,
that.
but we understand we have some variances to hear. So any other questions from the board? I'm getting a sense that we could talk about time extensions here.
When did the town take the sewer?
I think Kara mentioned to us that the sewer was taken at sometime in May, I believe. But in May,
Last year?
yes.
But initially, it was nothing but a private line for one homeowner.
Initially, it was nothing but a private line by one homeowner. Exactly. So some of the confusion that this is the hearsay. I can't exactly speak as a DPW employee, but what I've been explained to is, at the time that this was being put in, it was the whole private line discussion was still being had. The taking had not been negotiated yet, so the developer didn't have to put in stubs. A stub can be put in. There are 2 times that a stub can be put in. Once is when the sewer line is being laid, and another time is when you're connecting. There are limitations to both. The limitation to putting in a stub when you're connecting is you have to now put in a stub, but you can put it in at the path of least resistance. You can put it in directly through. If you put in a pre-existing stub when the line is put in, then you have to snake the sewer line to connect to where the stub currently is, which sometimes, depending on where the line is drawn, where the line is put, requires more expensive pumping, more landscaping, more linear feet. I can't speak for the policy decision that was made, but unfortunately the decision was, or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are, the decision was made to not put in the stubs. Exactly. We have to move forward.
I've had an experience where I had property that I ran a private sewer line down Windy Way.
Mm-hmm.
We went to all the people on Windy Way. We asked them if they would join us in paying for the sewer line so everyone could connect. There was 4 people who refused. So we didn't leave a stub for them at all because it was a private line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when we get through, then the town did decide to take it. But I know my daughter over in Salrose Road, they chipped in and did the whole sewer, and it's been 6 years, and the town still won't take it. So,
Well, let's
what I'm saying
let's
is,
go forward
is
with
it
this
the
situation.
town's- my question is it the town's? Does the town now automatically take every private line?
That is the current policy now, yes.
Okay, fine. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, if so, why not on that case? But anyway, you raised a number of issues that I
Yes.
found interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll have one more comment, then we'll discuss how we're going to move forward.
Okay, I won't be too long. I'm Karen McClellan from 37 Dukes Road, and I don't have as much background knowledge as all these people, but my question is, if the town were to put a sewer line down Dukes Road, if this line weren't there, would they put that same type of line in? And also,
Yes.
they wouldn't put an 8-inch?
No.
Yeah.
So, like, we have to put the macerator and the pumps and
Yeah.
all those, we have all that, and why is that, and why would they not?
The sheer expense, you'd have to have pump stations every few hundred yards on that road because of the lay of the land, the water problem. And then just to let you know, all the sewer that's proposed for coming up at town meeting, that's probably going to be all low pressure.
So all the other
everywhere.
people required to tie in are going to have to pay as much money?
A lot of it will be, I think.
Yeah, I think it's clear a lot of it will be.
Yeah.
The survey hasn't been done yet, so until the survey is done, we won't know how much gravity and how much pressure is going to be
It won't
in
be
the
all,
line.
it won't be all gravity.
Mhm.
There will be others. And my understanding is in your location, you would have to have pumps,
Mhm.
regardless of who put the line
Yeah.
in.
With all the hookups and all the new hookups, I'm worried about the integrity of the line as you go down and you keep cutting into it and adding, and I.
They make saddles for those lines. You don't have to cut
worry
it.
about the integrity of the
So
line.
you wrap it around, you drill the hole out, hook your line to it with a compression fitting. Yeah, they won't be cutting any sections out of it.
Because the town owns it
which is possible.
It's on the town to come fix it?
It's a town.
Are there stipulations of time for that? I think every time somebody hooks up, we have to turn off our plumbing. So for 50 houses hooking up, we're going to have a lot of days of no plumbing. So I worry about that aspect of it, and maybe if there's a way to coordinate who's hooking up when. Is there any advice that somebody can give the whole road of how we go about systematically doing it to limit the inconvenience and potential yuckiness of backed up systems or whatever?
Well, I don't think it's going to come to that point. You're going to do it. Everybody's going to be at a different point in time in the next few years, so you're going to have to dig into the road, which is the good thing is that it's dirt, and then you may be inconvenienced for a short amount of time to be able to get down. And then when they're tapping the line, everybody has a shut off too. You can just shut the ball valve off while you're doing it, and then you go back and turn your valves on. And nobody should be inconvenienced with backing up or anything like that.
Okay. One more question. If you just identify yourself.
I'm Wendy Greenberg.
Okay.
And,
could you repeat your name? I can hear you.
yes, Wendy Greenberg.
Thank you.
Yes. And I just want to thank everybody for answering questions because we have asked a lot of them because we have had a lot of learning curve on all of this sewage stuff. My husband calls me Norton now. Honeymooners. Anyway, I was wondering if during the time that we may have to hook up, if somehow the DPW could look at the line also, because we've spoken to a lot of engineers, and there are some concerns that if everyone on our street built out to the capacity like Alan Warden did, like 7 bathrooms in a house, that when everybody does hook up to the lines, that this line may not, the integrity of the line may be compromised. So I know that, the engineer that put the line in, put it in, it would be, since all the sewer work is being done, I think it would be nice to have our line looked at since we are going to be spending an inordinate amount of money. The pumps alone, the grinder pumps are $7,000 alone for the pump to put in. And then we have to give a covenant to the town, and we have to maintain it, and all the lines along the way. So it's not only a huge expense, but it's a huge maintenance expense. We have to tear up our gardens, everything. We're still not convinced because we never did have this hearing, which the engineer did ask for. We did find out. He did ask the Board of Selectmen for a waiver hearing, at which time the Board of Selectmen and residents could come. I will, in my variance request, I have several examples where during those meetings, people asked the developer to put in stubs, and they had to agree to do so. The Board of Selectmen, acting as the sewer policy, now I know, said to the developer, if you want this line, you want to build your house bigger than your septic capacity, then you have to put in stubs, and you have to put in pumps, and you have to do a whole bunch of other things. And that's the opportunity that we didn't have. So we don't really know what else we would have been able to advocate for if we had had this opportunity. And that's not anybody here's fault, but we never had that opportunity. So we can't go back in time. This line is here, and if you and DPW tell us that it's going to sustain us, we're also a little bit concerned about power outages, which the EPA in their regulations, in their T16 regulations, require that there be something in the plan, because we are in Nantucket and we do have power outages. So with these pumps, do we also have to put in a generator? Is that another? No, we don't. Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, so anyway, I'm hoping that I don't have to come back next month to ask for my variance. Do I need a hearing on my variance? Do I need to come back because I came up for this hearing?
No, the variance would be, we would talk about your property only for each variance.
But do I need to come back for a hearing?
You don't have to be here, but if you want to defend it, it's up to you.
Should we talk about that for a minute,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? Just, I don't know how many lots are involved here. 50, 10, I don't know. But, I mean, is there a way to, if one of our solutions is a deferral of the hookup time, is there a way, Roberto, that we can do that for everybody without having to require each individual lot owner to come for a variance request?
We could
Right.
today
We can do that
extend
today.
the time.
I'm not saying we have to do it today,
Yeah, but at
but I'd
some
like
point
to
we-
make it, that would make it clear to everybody that you don't have to come to get that. If you want something else or more, that's a different question. But at least in terms of this possible solution, we ought to figure out a way to make it, a matter of right, so you don't have to come and,
Right.
okay?
Because
Another-
clearly getting the consensus of this board is there will be some extension
Thank
of
you.
time.
And I have another suggestion.
Assuming, I know at least 3 people agree.
Thank you.
I
Very
haven't, I don't know about these 2 yet.
I also have a suggestion. The stub fee, which was estimated to be $1,500, should actually be about $500. Now we find out. Is that's sort of what we've been told. Anyway, there's a $500 hookup fee. Just so happens to be also $500. That I'm just suggesting, perhaps, that because we think those stubs should have be put in. I think now that the town owns the line, it may be impossible to go back to Mr. Warden and ask him to pay, and we're probably never going to get money from the town. But if we didn't have to pay that $500 permit fee, it may allow us to then have that $500 to give the engineer to put in the stub fee. That's just a suggestion. And any other fees. I just had one question about the betterment loan, tax loan.
You wouldn't have that.
I wouldn't have that?
No.
Why?
No, you can.
Oh, loan. I thought you wouldn't have
The
a
loan.
betterment fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Not
can have the
charge,
loan.
Thanks. No, I don't want to know about the charge.
Yeah.
Just,
No, you can have the loan.
Just the loan.
You can
But
have
the
a loan, but-
Okay, the loan's 2%. And what other conditions do you give do you have to give your first male child, or
No.
give your property to the town, or
No, it's you just have to apply for it here. What we need is quotes for the connection so that we know how much to loan, and then you apply for the loan. The application is actually online, but we can also email it to you as well.
do you take a lien on the property?
It's tied to the taxes. It's tied to the taxes, so it's amortized over 20 years, paid for on your taxes.
Okay. And the town has a lien by the tax. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and now the $63 privilege fee for having the privilege of having Mr. Warden put a line in for us. That privilege fee, we can offset all but $2,000 of that, correct? On our tax bill over 20 years,
I think that's up to the assessor. And
right? And that's 4%?
You can,
Yeah, through Deb Dilworth's office, you can betterment that $6,300. I'm not sure about the
Yeah, I'm not sure about the-
$500 you have to pay. You can betterment.
I think 2,000 you have to pay.
Coming
the-
off a septic, it's 500.
Yeah, the,
500, and the rest you can, okay, and that's 4%.
Yeah, but just to make sure, what I heard you say was, or imply, I thought was that the 2,000 was part of the 6,700, and I assumed the 2,000 was the connection fee, which is going to be 500, but it's not part of that, just to be clear.
Yeah,
The
so
privilege fee, whatever the amount is,
6,300.
63, 60-something, is what it is. It's not offset by anything else. It is amortizable over the 20 years as part of your taxes,
Except for
so that you
2,000.
don't have to pay it up front.
No. All 6,300 can be. The $2,000 that they were talking about is the connection fee, which in this case, because it's septic to
That's in
sewer,
addition to the 6,300?
it would have been in addition, but because it's septic to sewer, it's now 500. That's that $500 connection fee.
Okay.
But all 6,300
Okay, I got
is
it now.
amortizable.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I was
Thank
missing.
you.
I missed that first part of the
Thank
question.
you.
It's-
all right. Okay, so comments on this issue from the board? I'm trying, Give me a minute while I'm sort of organizing what I think we should do. Go ahead.
Are we talking about people that have to hook up immediately if we're going to do something? Are we talking about the whole sewer build-out for everyone else?
I think we're just talking Dukes Road.
Just Dukes Road.
Just Dukes Road.
Just Dukes Road.
This is just,
It's a little different because they woke up one morning and found a sewer line, and some of the communication was not probably adequate. One more thing.
Okay, one more thing.
Can you get to the microphone? Because we won't. We would like to record you.
Just explain a little bit more about the communication even before we received this letter from, a few of us received the letter from the engineer. I was told that we were going to have a sewer line, and by one of my neighbors who's on the Conservation Commission, he said, I heard there's going to be a sewer line. I was excited because one day I'd like to build a little cottage maybe. After this, probably won't. But so I started asking questions. This was in December. I started asking questions to the Board of Health. Mr. Santa Maria was not there. I asked Mr. Ray. He asked the DPW. I have a set of emails that have gone back and forth that are a bit embarrassing, more on their part than mine, although I have misspellings in mine also. But I was really asking, the reason I was asking was, if this sewer line's going down my street, am I going to be able to hook up? Because there's another sewer line on Dukes Road that I tried to hook up to and was told I couldn't.
the old John Nicholson line?
Yes, because it isn't full. It isn't full capacity. It doesn't, and I'm not sure that this one is either. That's why I'm not sure that the Board of Health has to enforce Regulation 69, because I'm not positive that if everybody hooks up, it's really going to be able to handle it. But I have this communication, and I could not get answers. Otherwise, I would. If I had known in any way, if Mr. Ray had known, if Silvio Gennaro had known, if the engineer had known that we were going to have to hook up, I would have gotten everybody together and seen if we could try to get a bigger line, a more substantial line. So
I can't comment on the past. We're just going to work forward now. All right. Any thoughts? I mean, I hear the consensus. We're working towards an extension of the time.
Yeah, I think we might want to ask Roberto for some language for next time, a resolution, and it does and maybe we give him some guidance on how long that deferral should be. I think that's the main thing to zero in on here.
And I think at this point it's just setting up a deferral date and when the board would think that it's a reasonable time for them to connect to sewer. Obviously, they were given a 6-month time frame, which we're obviously all in consensus that it's too soon. So you can set up a time from now to whenever.
Well, my sense, they had 6 months from October.
They had 6 months from October.
So if we did to next October, is that too long, too short? What's the sense?
It's 7 more months.
I mean, that's a 1-year total.
That's a 1-year total. It's a 6 months extension, essentially.
I'd be willing to go a little more than that, Mr. Chair. 18 months. I might even consider 2 years, but
we could.
I think that's the outside of the current. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but then everybody knows exactly what it's got to be, and they can plan accordingly, and by that date, it's in. And no further questions.
And as far as enforcement goes on the health department side, it is our policy that once the work is started, a sewer permit is pulled or the engineered plans are turned in, things like that, we're not going to be fining. It's because the work is started.
So
I don't know.
What about
maybe
timing?
18 months? I don't know. What do you want to do?
Are you guys comfortable with
I'm
extension?
comfortable with 18 months.
18 months? So that would be 18 months from October, or 18 months from now. No.
It's up to the board. 18 months from now would put us into September of 2018.
That's almost 2 years from the start date. That's fine with me too.
That would put us.
It's clean. We know whatever that date was. If it was October, whatever that date is.
I would just to be like 2 years from October would be
So 2 years from October would be October 2017. We
Yes,
can-
so it's an extension of 18 months, essentially.
Yeah.
So,
No, 2 years from October would be 2018.
Well, no, of October of 2015,
Oh,
from when we sent them the
okay,
letter.
from last
Yeah, from the
October.
letter, yes.
I'm
So,
trying to keep it in line with
with the letter.
somewhat with the letter, because that was the official letter, and we're just extending
Mhm.
the letter 18 months.
Correct.
So
We can resend the letter saying that the board has voted, well, the board hasn't voted yet,
and,
but
and then the residents can decide whether or not they want to submit their variances or not.
I can. Mhm.
I can't stop you from submitting a variance, but we tend to be pretty strict about accepting them.
Right, and I don't know, Steve may know more about this, whether there are any economies of scale if you all buy the same grinders from trying to get a 20% discount. I have no idea, but there might be possibilities there to coordinate your efforts, okay?
You know, I don't see why we can't just vote on that 18 months today. We don't
We
need
can.
anything else.
But I'd like to see the language, and I think because we've had, I mean, I don't mind voting on it today, but I think before the letter goes out, because we've had issues, let's see the letter itself at our next meeting. Everybody knows what's going to happen, and that, seeing the letter doesn't delay
Right.
anything.
So what we can do-
We're actually discussing having a special meeting next week.
Okay.
Mm.
So-
Yeah, that's what was in my director's
So
report.
we could,
We can vote on the 18 months, that's what goes in the letter, and then let's
we'll see the letter before we send it out next week, if we agree to have that meeting. So I need a motion to extend the time for Dukes Road, this is Dukes
Dukes
Road
Road.
only, to October, 2 years from
October 2017. No, 2017.
17.
Because the letter was sent out in October of 2015.
Oh, it went out in 15.
Yeah, we're in 16 now.
I'm sorry, I'm not doing well today. So to October 2017.
Okay. October 1st, October 15th, October 30th,
October 30th.
October 30th.
October 30th.
I have a motion for the extension.
Sure, I move that we authorize the director to extend the deadline for hooking up the sewer connections into the line on Dukes Road until October 30, 2017.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, so it is extended. And then the Dukes Road people still have an option of putting in a variance, but you've got more time. You can always put in a variance later.
Thank you.
Okay? And then we will, next week, at our special meeting next week, we'll review the letter.
That'd be great.
What I wanted the special meeting for, I was going to jump into
Yeah, I was gonna
director's
put it into the
report,
director's
is
report.
with town meeting coming up, there are actually two opposing warrants. One on the right to farm, which essentially says farm animals can make all the noise they want. And there's another warrant that's restricting noise. And I know it's our absolute favorite subject to talk about noise, but unfortunately the laws of Massachusetts have put this into our jurisdiction. And I think we should have an opinion of the board to be expressed at that town meeting.
Okay.
So I would like to be able to stand up and say the Board of Health blank, because those two warrants are in conflict with each other. So if you have no objections, we will hold a special meeting a week
Next
from today
Thursday.
at 4 o'clock. And the two, it'll be very quick because we'll discuss the Board of Health's opinion on warrants and whether we support them or don't support them. And maybe if we have two opposing warrants, we might come up with some language for amendment to one or the other, whatever.
Should we issue votes or opinions on other articles as well, or just those two? Do you want me to just say
the only other articles are
be
the
sewer
articles. I mean, I don't think anyone here is going to object. We support unless there's
Okay.
you know.
All right.
Yeah,
You can-
I don't think you need to jump in on the sewer
Okay.
articles. They're
Yeah.
already heavily advertised, discussed, and have lots of opinions,
Yeah,
just awaiting debate.
the waiting debate, and I think it's, for all the efforts we put in the last couple of years on this issue, we are for sewers. And how they're funded is not a Board of Health issue.
Sounds good.
We don't deal with that. And anything else you have for us?
So, going from there, so we are scheduling the meeting for next Thursday at 4 o'clock
Right.
in this room? Okay.
Warrant review of those two warrants and an approval of your letter,
Okay.
Dukes Road.
In Dukes Road, yes. Okay. All right, so let me go straight to the director's report now. I know Ms. Weld wanted to speak to mosquito controls.
mosquitoes,
So,
Oh, yeah, no, the mosquito control group will be meeting on Tuesday, the 22nd, at 3:30. We have two new members, Dr. Tim Leffery and Alicia, I can't remember her last name, from Concom, I believe, taking Sarah Otai's place.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we'll be beginning our preliminary. Ashley, sorry. Okay, the other one's from the government.
Yeah,
sorry.
Ashley Arisman, right.
Thank you. So we'll be beginning discussion on the program moving forward for this year. So I thought you might be interested in attending. And that's it on mosquitoes.
Is the program much like last year? I mean, everybody seemed to be so pleased.
I think, yes.
You know,
I think we have this
good-
one
good
firm
work.
that we're working with that
Yeah.
is superb, and they're doing the testing and the treatment. So fingers crossed. They're on a 3-year contract, so.
that's good. And along the same lines, this morning I actually created a brochure for Mosquito Outreach that I'll be bringing to that meeting for approval of the Mosquito Commission. I passed it by the town manager today, and they are very happy with it. There was an old brochure that had been passed 10, 15 years ago now that desperately needed update. So I updated it, and it should be ready to be sent out as soon as we get it approved. So over the past month or so, we have started some of the opening inspections. We have started scheduling the opening inspections for the summer establishments. We're moving forward to on plan reviews, on many. There's been some restaurants that are changing hands, some food establishments that are changing hands, so there's been some permitting process there. We have been really busy. Kathy and Art have been out on the field really working like crazy. We really appreciate them, and Anne has been running the office very well. We are also bringing in Hank Ross, our seasonal inspector, a little bit earlier this year to help enforce the fertilizer, which is my next section. But Hank will be starting on April 11th. He did ask to start 1 week later due to some logistics issues with getting back onto the island. The next step with the fertilizer advisory group, we have reached a amount of people that we wanted. So we have Mr. Wraith from Wraith Landscaping, Mike Mizzarelli from M&L Landscaping. Yes, M&L. Cormac Collier has requested to be on it, and I always forget his name from the Sankaty Head Golf Course. Mark Lucas.
Mark from Nantucket. Yeah.
Nantucket. Yes, Nantucket Golf Club. Mark Lucas, he signed up, and then it'll be myself. So we would have a 5-member fertilizer group, and I am looking to schedule a meeting within the next 2 weeks. I have sent out an email today, so we should be hearing it back. We're looking forward to working on outreach, as well as if we need to do any changes to the regulations to bring forth regulation changes to us.
Right. And the hearing we still have an open hearing.
Yes, we still have.
Back to us.
We can always come back to it as soon as we decide that there's something to be brought back up. More than anything, I believe our first preliminary update will be in the April meeting, but the only time that we would probably have to open the hearing again would be in May, I believe. So we're moving forward with that. That's really good. And then I'm currently working on more outreach materials for some of the septic watersheds. I have created some flowcharts for Nantucket and Hummock Pond to send out to people, all the engineers, the installers, the haulers, as well as property owners, that just explains to them where the process is on how we determine what type of system they're going to get, mainly because there's always a lot of questions on, is it Wellhead? Is it Hummock A? Is it Hummock B? So it gets a little confusing for the general population. So I've created 2 of those flowcharts, which I can forward to you if you like. And then I'm also creating the Nantucket Harbor Watershed one right now. And I have also spoken with the wastewater treatment plant supervisor, and he is looking to update their regulations on fats, oil, and grease entering the sewer system. So I'm looking forward to meet with him, and then we can brainstorm some ideas, and I should bring some updates to you by the next meeting, hopefully.
Is that likely to move sort of upstream into the restaurant itself, for example? Where they may have
restaurants
to do
and homeowners.
treatment and up at that point.
Yeah, and homeowners as well. There's, with the change in demographics and cooking styles on the island, the sewer lines that have been in place aren't necessarily equipped to handle some of the larger aspects of the total suspended solids that tend to go in, as well as the oils and the greases issues that are going
which
in.
could eventually impact the maintenance cost of keeping the sewers
Exactly.
clear. So
exactly.
we need to make sure I'm talking to myself, I guess, but that's an important element to plan for.
Exactly. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with him to see where we can revive what we call the fog regulation. So I'm looking forward on that one. And that's where I stand right now.
Good.
Could I just ask 2 questions? Last May, we did a very successful symposium with the hospital on opioid abuse, and with it on the front page of today's paper.
Yes.
Are we going to do, I'm just throwing it out as a topic that we
Well,
probably should be talking about.
I don't know. We had the symposium. There's a lot of publicity about it.
I know.
I'm not sure having another one
No, I don't think. I
No.
don't think. Yeah, I think.
would help.
Yeah. But I mean, we had talked about possibly, I don't know, tracking it. Just keeping it on the radar screen.
Yeah. Well, it was certainly on the radar this morning.
Well, I know.
Yes.
Well, the governor's new bill, but
Yeah.
and also, do we have an intern or someone who's going to be doing tracking communicable diseases?
So the CDC did not match us with an intern this year, unfortunately. But I am still waiting to hear back from Boston University to see if we can get one of their students as well. Abigail has offered to come back for this summer to do her practicum through BU as well. So we can probably have her as well as a second intern if things go well. So we will, barring anything wrong, we will have Abby back, which we're really excited about.
Great.
For at least this summer.
I don't want to forget the tick-borne diseases.
Exactly. I have
No,
spoken.
we have to go back. We've been mired in sewers recently, so
Yeah.
we're back to some other health issues.
I actually spoke with Stephen Tidd 2 weeks ago, the infection preventionist at the hospital, and he and I have worked out a basic idea of how we can do the communicable disease reporting, tracking, and data tracking. So he is now actually sending me a monthly report of all the communicable diseases. Clearly, if it's less than 5, I won't be able to give the number based on reporting issues, but after we reached a certain threshold, I'll be able to start reporting some of the diseases and illnesses that we have been seeing on the island. I received word yesterday, actually, from a newspaper, the Cape Cod Times, called asking for a quote saying that apparently there was some health report that was released that says Nantucket is the healthiest county in Massachusetts. I'm trying to get my hands.
I haven't seen
I'm
that.
trying to get my hands on that report before I give any comment. But it is still good to hear.
Be nice.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would like to take sole responsibility for it. No, I'm kidding.
One more thing. and then we'll go.
Okay. if I might, maybe it was mentioned before, how did the 20 Nobadir item come to our attention?
I believe it was a complaint. The fire department, yes.
They went in on what they call a 26F inspection, which is for transferring all 4 units. They were for sale.
Ah.
And found that there was COs lacking, smoke detectors lacking, and overcrowding. And then they also found the portable heating units where people were living in the garages and the cellars.
So it was part of a routine inspection process given certain things.
And they called us and we
Good.
all went in.
Thank you. Just good.
Further on that, I know we approved the thing that they could store those mattresses in the garage, but is anyone going to check up on that? Because if they were sleeping in the garage, all they're going to have to do is flip them down and start all over.
Where that's...
My issue, because a lot of the mattresses, one of the houses had, I would say, between 15 and 20 mattresses between the garage and the basement. And the other house probably had 10.
Well,
I'd
we'll
have to look at my pictures.
we'll see next month.
It's the problem
it's
that
just
we...
storage.
It's.
Yeah, and that's what I.
But if I would suggest that if next month we continue to allow the storage, that we'd ask you to go look at it. But we will see next month and make a decision.
We would have to do an update inspection and a
Anyway.
follow-up inspection anyway if
Yeah.
if we are to lift the condemnation. So
Yeah, one other sort of question or comment. So in our regulation, was it 64, picking up septics going out in the Harbor Watershed District, which isn't just going out because it's all the way around town, actually. There's also the Wellhead Protection District.
yes.
And we haven't applied that regulation to that district, have we?
As far as the IA at property transfer, just as strict as the Harbor Watershed is, it's not in the same
I'm
way.
just sort of
But
asking.
we are enforcing in the Wellhead Protection District based on the way the regulation is written with certain IAs at failure, I believe.
Correct.
Well, I guess I'm just sort of asking. Some of the Wellhead Protection District is in the Harbor Watershed anyway.
Some
And how
is,
much
yes.
is outside, and is it, I don't know whether it's worth looking into incorporating that as part of the same, an area that's covered by the same regulation. So it's just a question. I don't know whether that's good policy or not.
The way we've been handling it is if they're in overlapping district, if they're in both the Wellhead and Nantucket Harbor Watershed, the Nantucket Harbor Watershed takes precedent. They would have to install the IA, and then Wellhead already requires IA at failure. But if they're outside of the Harbor Watershed, they won't need it at transfer.
I see.
One more thing.
So basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, Rick, so there's no 5-year inspection in septic systems within the wellhead area, but you're talking about transferring some of that stuff into that.
I'm just sort of, let's always think about it, because if there's a good reason for that wellhead district to exist, but it may be it's a different problem than nitrogen flow into the harbor, so that it may not be as necessary or helpful. I don't know.
Okay. Good. Anything else? Well, hearing no objections, I'll see you on April 21st.
No, next Thursday.
No, I'm sorry, next Thursday.